transition, balance, love, passion for expression, inner beauty and confidence, the naked truth, empowerment, creative artistic expression. You were created on purpose, for a purpose. Legacy begins with us. It's not too late for change. New legacy. And today is a very special day because I am here with someone who is very important to me, who has changed my life and inspired me. And that is why I wanted her to be on this show so that she could inspire you. This is a phenomenal woman. No, let me scratch that. This is an extraordinary queen. And she has accomplished so many things. And she has been a missionary. She has been a leader. She has fought on the front lines for changing our community. And this fight that she has put up has been recognized by officials, judges, the mayor, and even President Obama. She was nominated a champion of change for being the first African American to start a transgender organization in the South. Not only that, dignitaries recognized her because she went to her pastor and petitioned him for a transgender ministry, which was very successful. I am a product of that success. Today on this show, we will learn about our history because she is walking history. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to a woman who has touched a lot of lives and her living will never be in vain. Mrs. Dee Dee Chamblee. Let's start the show.
Would we be further or still be passive about the love walk, the love mandate? Would we listen? Would we participate? Would we decide that we must do everything that we were born to do? 'Cause everyone has a plan, destiny. Everyone that includes you and me. Everyone has a plan, destiny.
So I would like to first ask my mother to tell us a little bit about her journey in this life. You know, what brought her to advocacy and what made her want to save a community that just seems like sometimes it doesn't even want to be saved.
What really brought me into a greater consciousness about my community, about my people, and about myself and my role in this community. And what did I really want to do? I knew what I had suffered from had been very atrocious and had meant to oppress me and literally kill me. And I know that the same things that I suffered from, my people, my children, my babies, I know they've suffered too in more ways than one. All my life I had to fight. I literally had to fight my way through school just to get an education. And upon receiving my GED at Job Corps Center in Albany, Georgia, I came in contact with some people there, and we were all on one accord, I thought. I ended up in jail, in prison. First time I had ever been to prison. Just getting out of school and getting my GED, and there I was in prison. The prison I was in, there was like maybe 60 hard up black young bloods in one cell, and all the cell blocks were open. And when they threw me and my friend into the cell block, it was like chaos. It was like a riot. They were pulling out blankets and sheets and said we were going this way and that way. And we didn't know what to do, so we went back to the day room, and they were just surrounding us and were just walking in a circle, just gagging at us. And I told my girlfriend, I said, girl, I don't know what to do. I've never been in prison before, but I've seen on TV that you need to find the biggest, baddest looking one in here who will ever run this cell block. And do what you gotta do to please him so the rest of them don't get a hold to you. Well, we found him. And we found out his name was Dog. And Dog was a Rottweiler. Nasty Rottweiler. Country Rottweiler. Anyway, his cell contained 7 other men. And we went in there for protection from the other 52 men that could get a hold to us. And we were protected for a few hours till the cell blocks closed and we were shut in and the lights went out. Well, we had to divvy up. She had to have 4 and I had to have 4 so we could get through the night and maybe stay in the cell block and not have to go out there and have these other men. But in the process of having these other men, the guard came and called us. Knew that this was going to happen. We were thrown in there just for that reason, because they knew this was going to happen. We got thrown in the hole, where there was a little hole in the floor, and rats could come up out of there, so we had to take the little mattress we had and put it over the hole, so the rats would come up out of there. And there was nothing else but hard brick cell block, nothing else in there. And we stayed. After my release from that situation, I went back to school. And I attended nursing school and got my nursing assistant degree. After that, I was discriminated against on my job because I was too feminine. The patients thought I was a woman, and they said I was confusing the patients, so they got rid of me, which led me back to the streets, prostituting. And in between prostituting, I would get husbands here and there, because I really didn't want to be a prostitute. But I knew that was the only way I could make money and the only way I could find a good husband. I knew if he dated me and gave me money, then I could always depend on him to give me money if he was my husband. That was my thinking. So I would prostitute until I ran up on a good husband that would pay me, and I could be a housewife, and I would go back to being a housewife again. But this went on back and forth between husbands after husband after husband. I usually would keep a husband 2 years. That was the max at that time. During that time, men weren't like they are today, because gay men were in the closet, they were hiding. We were the only ones that were out battling with the police, going through all the brutality the police took us through, because if we were caught with any line of feminine clothing on down to our underwear, we would be arrested. And if they saw us on the street, we would have to take our wigs off and throw them in the sewer until they passed in order to keep on working.
Yeah, and that's what I really wanted to get into about the history, because you were around when HIV first came on the scene.
Yeah.
And we've always been in activism.
Yeah.
We've always been activists. We've always been a part of the community. So I would like for you to take this time to tell us just a little bit about what the transgender people did when HIV first came out, and the rest of the community, the heterosexual community, had basically turned their backs on the GLBT community and were leaving all of us to die. What was that experience like?
It was like a Holocaust. We couldn't even keep up with how many people were dying. So many girls were dying every week that we would have to really literally call each other and ask, did Miss Rachel die last week? Did Miss Somakusa, did she die? Did you tell me she died? Because we couldn't keep up with who was dying, because so many were dying. And when you went to try to get help down at the hospital or anything, you were treated like dirt. And you would have to sit there. You would have to take your a bag lunch, because you were going to sit there all day just to get seen, and then reverted or turned away or mistreated while you're there to where you're embarrassed, so you don't want to stay there to ask for no help. The police were relentless in their brutality of arresting us. We were arrested for traffic violations, sometimes for 2 to 3 weeks at a time, and not to mention how they would beat us and brutalize us, and have sex with us and still take us to jail. You know, that's what kind of low-down people that we were dealing with down during that time.
So how did the trans community retaliate? I mean, how did they retaliate with this? How did they begin to stand for their rights? What were some of the things they did to try to combat this?
Well, a girl was killed by the police, which brought all of us together. And we went to City Hall, all of us. I mean, from the girls from the east side to the west side, we all came together and went to City Hall and demanded that an investigation be opened in her death. It was squashed, but it cut down on brutality from the police. From then on, we were so distraught because of the HIV and AIDS in the community. We didn't know what to do but survive. And literally the system was telling us, we don't care about you, we want you to die. We don't care about you, we want you to die. We don't want to see you. We would rather you commit suicide or go throw yourself off a cliff, so we don't even have to see you no more. But the men didn't feel that, because the men would come from the Decatur, the east side, men from the middle class neighborhoods, good homes, wives and children. They would come on Friday nights on Honered Street, as it was called at one point, which should turn into Martin Luther King. The cars would be lined up like a parade, like you was on Las Vegas Strip. And it would be mostly all of these men that were coming there. And when the virus really hit, all of them ran back to the suburbs and back to their wives, to assuming the identity that they had been accustomed to, but were really venturing out into our community. During that time, gay men were also in the closet and perpetrated to be men, you know.
Heterosexual.
Yeah, they were perpetrated to be heterosexual men. I wouldn't say perpetrated, but they were playing the role to get the standard of living or whatever they were looking for from mainstream society. society. They want to keep that illusion up.
So what prompted you, after going through all this in your life, what prompted you to decide that you wanted to open a nonprofit after, being in prison, having to work the streets, all these things that were happening to you? I mean, what prompted you to say, okay, I want to start an organization? Did someone inspire you? What happened?
Yes, I found a place where at that time I did not love myself that well. And I found a place that let me learn to love myself again. And that's when I received the Lord in my life. When I realized that He loved me, and that what people had been saying about me, about how God hated me, about how I was going to be condemned to the pits of hell. When I finally realized the actual truth that He loved me, it changed my whole life. And I figured that if that changed my life, it would change other people's lives also. And then God began to move me into places like the jailhouse where I used to go in the back door and they used to arrest me. He turned it around where I ended up going in the front door, going back to those same jail cells and having support groups with the transgender girls that were in the jail.
We need that in New Orleans.
And the light of me just coming, presenting to them an idea that maybe if you start changing the way that you think about yourself now, before you get out, you won't travel in the same steps again. You'll travel toward doing something that's going to better your life and give you more self-worth. And the girls, when I would look in their eyes, I would see me. And I would go back to when I was there and I felt hopeless. And I was caught in that vicious circle of going to jail and getting out and being homeless and being with men I didn't want to be with and all that came along with it just to survive. I would see all of that when I would look in their eyes. And I said, that's me. That's me when I was a little girl. Like that. I know how she feels. Well, at one of the support groups, the girls started relating to me and telling me that there was a judge giving them 6 months for charges that we used to get 2 or 3 days for. We get locked up on Friday night and they let us out Monday morning. And they would lock us up that way. But he was taking these kind of charges and turning them into 6 months. And the girls were just crying how brutal. This judge had a name that rung throughout the jail. When you said his name was Judge Riley. When you said his name, it just shook the prisoners. Didn't nobody want to go in front of him. So I said, well, who is this Judge Riley? I'm thinking, oh, he's a demon. How can he do this to people? Well, come to find out, Judge Riley had, I guess you would say, some kind of method to his madness in the way he thought. He thought that by putting girls in jail for 6 months, they would clean themselves up, they would give them a chance to drive off of drugs, and then they'll have a sane enough mind to come out and try to do something for themselves. This was his thinking because there were no programs or anything that were helping transgender women until he met me. And when he met me and explained this to me and him started collaborating together. And he changed the whole atmosphere of Atlanta Municipal Court and the Superior Court. He changed the whole atmosphere from the time you walk through to go through the security guard to get checked and everything to go through into the building. Usually that experience was horrific for a trans girl, trans woman. You were ridiculed and mocked the whole way through that whole system. He changed that, and he changed the way the judges start referring to the girls. Even though they didn't have their name changed, he still referred to them as she and miss, which was a breakthrough in such a dark environment that was so oppressive to people like us. And the judges, and that's when we started being able to get the name change done. Because the name change is still girls' liberation from a name that really binds them. So the name changes really help liberate our community to believe that they could achieve something greater, that they could come out from under that crutch. Because it was $160 during that time to get name change, which is a lot of money for a person that doesn't have a job.
Right.
And that's supporting themselves, trying to live, provide for their housing, food, and whatever else necessities they got to have at the time.
So you and I want to just touch this real briefly. You said something about at the time you had husbands for like 2 years. What's going on with your love life right now?
Well, this is my 13th husband. But this marriage has lasted 22 years. And he's still living, and he still loves me. And I would not be able to do the work that I do if it wasn't for him. He's my backbone, he's my support. When I'm sick, he brings me a glass of water, feed me dinner, and give me a foot massage.
And your name is Dee Dee Chamblee. What's his name?
His name is Ronnie Chamblee.
Oh, okay.
He's also a DJ Ron, New York DJ Ron.
So, and that just gives so much hope to the community right there. I want to talk about your most recent venture. You were nominated a champion of change by our president, Barack Obama, and you've recently been making a lot of trips to the White House. Tell us a little bit about that. What did that mean for you, being an African American trans woman who set out to start the first nonprofit organization for trans women in the South, which is a place that is just very difficult, and having the president, the first black president, to recognize that accomplishment? What does that feel like for you?
It was beyond believable. It was the impossible. When I always talk to God, I said, Lord, I am the impossible. You know where I came from. You know where you came and got me from a very dark place. How did this happen that I would end up at the White House? I'm not a gorgeous beauty. I'm not an intelligent person with a college degree. Why would you choose me to do this? Of all the people who I feel deserve it more than I do. But I don't question it. I go along with it because I know it's something that is meant to give our people a platform to achieve better and bigger things. We were on the White House website. We had a blog, and it talked about transgender equality. On the White House website, I didn't even know the White House had a website. And when I got there and saw my picture and saw the article on transgender equality, I knew why God had done all this. He had did this to show people He's not a respecter of persons. If you're willing, He's able.
Amen. So, I want to ask you about the transgender ministry that was also the first transgender ministry that was started at a Baptist church in the South, Tabernacle. I want you to tell us what prompted you to go to the pastor and say, we need this ministry? Because even though the ministry is not that active now, the ministry created like some apostles, like, you know, that went out and started to minister in different areas, you know, and I'm an alumni of that. So what prompted you to go to the pastor and to encourage him to start that transgender ministry at Tabernacle Church?
Well, my pastor, Pastor Dennis Meredith, was the first man that I had seen to stand up in the pulpit and preach for transgender people and for their rights and for our church and congregation to love and accept us. I had never seen a man do that before. It's hard to get someone to speak out for transgender people, you know, if they're not transgender. Even though we're human beings, it's hard to get human beings to speak about us as human beings. But this man did, and I held him in high esteem for doing that, because everybody is not able, but he was, and that inspired me. And I asked him one day, Pastor, why is it that it seems that we are always the last? And he said, well, what I read in the Bible, the last shall be first.
Amen.
And that's what I said, amen. And I left it like that. So we have our place, as we have our place right now in that church. We had the first Women's Day choir with 8 transgender women in the choir.
Wow.
This is a Baptist church, and we sang, and the whole church ran up to the front of the church when we sang our part. It was a day of victory, a day I didn't ever believe would happen in my lifetime. For someone like me to be able to be there and to be accepted like this. And within a year's time, after that, I confronted the pastor about it, and he was excited about having a transgender group. In fact, he was the one that said it should be a ministry, because I was only thinking of a support group. And no, he said transgender ministry. That's a transgender ministry in a Baptist church? Wow. Okay.
It was a ministry.
And it was a ministry.
Balance, love, passion for expression, inner beauty and confidence, the naked truth, empowerment, creative artistic expression. You were created on purpose, for a purpose. Legacy begins with us. It's not too late for change. New legacy.